that if there was an immersed membrane plant, that's no issue. They could discharge into Shivers Fork.
Well, I mean, our protocol, we're allowing them to make statements.
You want me to respond to that?
No, the statements are open, they can make their statements.
Okay, well, I think it's correct that a membrane plant can discharge into a Tier 3 stream. So that it is a viable option to return the water from the membrane plant into Shivers Fork. The issue about waste load allocation that Dayton brought up, my understanding of the way waste load allocation works is that the DEP looks at a stream, looks at its current health and quality, how much allowed degradation is allowed, and then looks at the technology that is used. Typically, when you're putting a sewage plant, you're talking about tertiary treatment, which is standard. And so the waste load allocation for the 1.5 million was for tertiary treatment. When you go into advanced wastewater treatment, which is what the membrane is, because you're returning a very clean effluent, you actually will get higher waste load allocation for the receiving stream because it's not degrading the stream. The issue about Canaan Valley being higher quality, it's a lower quality stream, and they have very stringent requirements because that stream is so degraded by acid mine drainage and coal mining. That is why they're putting the membrane plant in there, is because that stream cannot tolerate any additional degradation. The clustered systems there that Mr. Carpenter talked about haven't been implemented. It's a solution that's right for Canaan Valley. It's because they did a study that planned and looked at the existing systems and the geography and said this is the right solution. It has nothing to do with what's working or what's not working. The other thing on what Tom Michael said about the environmental work that had been done, the BAT study, the project did not do a BAT study. The project took an existing BAT study that was done 2 years ago for a golf course, so it was not done by the project. The issue about the temperature, the discharge temperature, the effluent temperature, was raised by downstream strategies and was brought to the PSD. It was not identified by their expert. And as a matter of fact, there's a letter from the PSD last fall to the DEP asking the DEP to lift the requirement for the effluent cooling on the project so that they wouldn't have to invest the additional money. As far as the knowledge of karst that Dayton mentioned, there is testimony from early in the project that their engineers did not know that the Big Spring Fork was an intermittent dry stream. Did not know that there was a spring behind Miss Shelton's trailer that they were planning to trench through. The current map that I saw at Thrasher Engineering shows Sharp Cave on the south side of Route 219. So the fact that they say they understand the karst issues here in this valley, I don't think is accurate.
What side is the Sharps Cave?
It's on the north side.
Isn't it 219 north-south?
But the orientation there is actually east and west. Yeah. The core drilling that was done on the site was auger refusal. Basically went down to the topsoil until it hit bedrock. There were some that penetrated into the limestone in the first core drilling, maybe three or four. It wasn't at every equipment location. It wasn't at every foundation. The microgravity work that was done later came back and did 3 lines across the site. If you look at where those 3 lines lay and where the data was collected, the stations that were collected, there are only 5% of the points actually lie underneath equipment. The rest of it's under parking lots or buildings, not underneath critical equipment. So the site has not been properly investigated. The talk about looking at alternate sites downstream is, again, the paradigm that a regional plan is the answer. It has never been considered that something other than a regional plan is the answer. If you would break that paradigm and look at something else, this whole alternate site issue would go away. There are other solutions. I'd like to know where the regional plant concept came from. Woody Thrasher didn't someday wake up and said Slaty Fork needs a regional plant. Somebody came to him and said, we need to build a regional plant at Slaty Fork. I'd like to see the study that says that the regional plant is the answer for this community in this valley. As far as the experts that came in, Dr. Roush is a PhD geologist from WVU. He came in and testified. It was obvious from his testimony and the report that he wrote that he based his information on others' reports that he had read. His knowledge of the site was very limited at the time. He said that he had been familiar with the area by bringing his geology students down to the karst area in Slaty Fork. I was one of his students when I was in graduate school at WVU. We did go to the Slaty Fork area. We did not go to the spring behind Miss Shelton's trailer. We did not go to Mr. Shipley's field. And so he had never been on the site that he was being asked about when he testified during the public hearing. The issue with the EIS that is very clear that was missed is that it is to look at alternatives, all alternatives. That includes no build, That includes what risks does a project introduce. Right now, there is not raw sewage being transported. 500, 600,000 gallons per day is not being transported down through this valley. It's not mentioned in the FONSI, is not considered. A single failure of that pipe, and it does happen, it may not happen in the first 5 years, but pipes fail. It might be 20 years from now, but a single event is going to ruin this watershed. And it's going to take 10 to 15 years for it to recover. Never considered in the FONSI.
Excuse me, Mr. Phillips, could you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you wait until the commissioners are through with their business to continue?
It's not our meeting, it's theirs.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you'd
Mr.
want to hear
Phillips,
this.
They open it up to us.
Mr. Phillips.
But consider the consequences of a failure on property value in future development. Who's going to want to live in a